If you have a true strange or scary story you'd like to share with the podcast, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to send it my way. And of course, thank you. Hi there. I'm new to your channel, but after hearing some of your more unexplained and glitch stories, I wanted to share something that happened to my grandmother and myself when I was younger. It's something I still try to make sense of as an adult, and it makes it even harder that not many people believe me. This happened back in the early 2000s. I was 9 years old and was sitting in the back seat, in my booster seat, buckled in. I was spending the summer with my grandparents, like I usually did, and it was always a blast for me. They turned my mom's old room into my room, and slowly my toys and clothing collection spread to their place as well. It was my second home, and I loved it. On Fridays, my grandma met up with some of her friends to play a game called Bridge. I remember that as a kid it was very confusing. She always let me pack a backpack full of toys, coloring stuff, whatever I wanted to help keep myself entertained, as we were typically there for several hours. My parents lived in the mountains on the East Coast. It was a smaller town. I remember there were a lot of older people that lived there, and I even remember asking my parents if that's where people had to move when they got old. I remember this because my parents still tease me about that question. Anyway, it was a small town that was connected to the outside world by a winding mountain road that snaked up and down the ridgeline for what felt like, as a kid, forever. And most of the time, I enjoyed it. I would watch out the window as we curved around and went up and down. But on a bad day, like when you weren't feeling too good, you had to roll down the window, close your eyes, and pray that you didn't get sick. I've taken that road countless times with my grandparents, and my parents. We had to take it to go to the grocery store in town for errands, to visit neighbors, or go to her bridge games. But Grandma was an excellent driver. She'd been driving that road for decades, as she put it, and she knew how to handle it. She knew where to take it slower, even if it was slower than the posted limit. She knew where to look out for the curves, especially if it had been raining or snowing. Hell, there was a hailstorm and she refused to even let my parents leave, and we ended up staying there that night. She knew every bend, every steep grade, and every spot where the guardrails were weak or missing entirely. When I was learning to drive, she always told me, "If you drive too fast up around here, these mountains and their curves will humble you real quick." This event happened one Friday during the summer. We were leaving my grandma's friend's place and heading back home from her bridge game. We were just about to enter the mountain when this little blue sedan came flying by us. The road that we were on was a 2-lane, with passing sections. We were just about to hit the mountain, and down at the beginning it's a no passing zone, since there was a steep hill. This driver clearly didn't care about that and gunned it past my grandma to get ahead. I remember this because the car was pretty loud, and it had one of those large black spoilers on the back. I also remember it because there was a large tractor trailer exiting the mountain, and they just barely missed each other. My grandma just shook her head. I can still hear her thick southern accent as she said out loud something along the lines of, "If they don't slow down before they hit those bends, they're gonna find themselves staring at the bottom again." We continued our drive as I talked about whatever kids talk about, when maybe 10 minutes later, we heard a car revving up again. Around another curve, we spotted that same blue sedan, now swerving past a small silver car. I remember commenting that we had caught up to them. I remember that my grandma said that speeding wasn't going to do them any good around here. Then we rounded the mountain to one of the most dangerous sections of the road. It was a series of sharp switchbacks that descend about 500 feet down the mountainside. The curves were so tight that you could barely see 15 feet ahead of you, and there was nothing but a thin guardrail between the road and the sheer drop into the valley below. There were signs posted about the curve, speed, tons of safety warnings, and my grandmother always took the road slow. She didn't mess around with that kind of stuff, always telling me how you're behind the wheel of a very large and potentially killing machine, and that it's your responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. As we began the descent with the silver car in front of us and the blue one in the lead, I watched the blue car take that curve way too fast. I watched their brake lights kick on, and I remember hearing the screech of tires. It was long and seemed to go on forever. I heard my grandma softly say, "Oh my goodness," and then we both watched as we heard metal on metal, as the blue car crashed into the guardrail and flew off the side of the mountain. My grandma let out a sort of yelp or scream, which then made me scream and I started crying. My grandma came down to a complete stop and the silver car seemed to slow down, but ultimately just kept going. Grandma put her car in park next to where the guardrail broke, and I think she tried to peer off the side, but she didn't get out. Her voice was shaky and she bowed her head and said a prayer for the car. I don't know why she didn't get out, but I really don't blame her. Now, as an adult, I don't think I would have been able to look either. Hearing her shaky voice, though, it only made me cry harder. I was terrified. I had just witnessed somebody's death. The drop had to be at least 300 feet straight down into a dense forest. My grandma didn't have a cell phone at the time, they weren't really huge around then, and my dad only had one because it was paid for by his work. And so after my grandma said her prayer, she reached back to calm me down and we drove away. However, we didn't drive straight home. She instead drove to a police station. I remember walking in with her and she explained to an officer that she needed to report an accident and that they should hurry in case the person was still alive. She explained to them what had happened and gave them directions, and then they asked her to take them to the location. We drove back to the location where we saw the car jump with 2 cop cars following behind us. Once we got there, one of the cops had already started blocking the road while the other got out with my grandma. She had the windows cracked, but I was told to stay in the car. I watched as they looked over the edge of the mountain. I then watched as the cop looked concerned, and my grandma would shrug and talk with her hands a bunch. After about 10 minutes or so, she got back in the car and we went home. I asked her if the people in that car were going to be okay, and she took a while to finally answer. And all she said was, "I don't know." But here is where it gets bizarre. The next day, a detective came to my grandparents' home and asked to speak with her alone. Then he asked to speak with me. Because I was a kid, he had to wait for my grandfather to get home so that an adult was with me. They didn't want my grandma to do it. I guess conflict of interest or something. So when he got home, they asked me what I saw, what I remembered. I told them everything. I probably gave them more than they needed, but I gave them our whole itinerary for that day. I explained how we went to the bridge game. I explained our drive to and the terrifying drive back. I explained seeing the blue car pass us as we entered and how we commented on them going too fast. I explained that I saw them pass the silver car, and then I saw them fly off the edge. I even asked the detective why the silver car didn't stop like we did. He asked me more questions about specifics, like details on the car, if I saw who was in the car, and even if my grandma had had anything to drink at her friend's house. My grandma drank tea, like nothing, and that's all she ever drank, and then he left. After that, my grandma didn't seem all there. As a kid, I assumed that she was just shaken up about the whole situation. Maybe the cops told her that they didn't survive, I wasn't sure. But then my parents asked me about what happened, and as I explained it all, they would constantly ask me, "Are you sure this happened? Are you sure you saw that? Are you sure Grandma didn't tell you that?" I thought the questions were odd, but again, I just answered them honestly and didn't understand. Little did I know that this would become quite a point of contention in my family. I wouldn't learn until I was a teenager that nobody believed us. When my grandma talked to the cop at the location, they couldn't see the car down there, yet the guardrail was broken. They later had a rescue team go down the side to try and find them or recover anything, or I guess anyone, but they were nowhere to be found. The car was gone, and there were no signs of people. There were even indentions between the trees and other plants like something hit it, but nothing was down there. There was no other sign that an accident had occurred. With how high up we were and all the rocks and trees down the side, there was no way that someone would have been able to pull that car out of there in the time it took us to drive to the station and bring them back to the site. Even if we include the time it took for the rescue team to get down there, which was the same day, without anyone noticing. Not to mention, it was highly unlikely that someone would have survived that fall, and if they had, they would have been in no shape to just pluck their car off of a mountain. So what the hell happened to that car? Over the years, Grandma would sometimes bring it up. She always maintained that we both saw that car go over the cliff. We both heard the tires squealing and the clash of metal. She would even motion to me to confirm, and I always did. I remembered all of it in detail. I would even finish her story, especially as I got older, which matched hers. But slowly, people became more and more agitated by my grandmother. My mom would often argue with her and tell her that she was just mistaken, and clearly she had scared me enough to repeat the same thing as her. Someone even claimed that she had hit the guardrail and made up this elaborate story to cover up her accident. But the problem with that theory was that the front bumper only had a small dent in it from a small bump that occurred at her grocery store. There was no new damage, and with how destroyed that guardrail was, she definitely would have had more damage to it. More damages to the side, too. As time passed, we both learned to just stop bringing it up. No matter what, my parents seemed to never show any interest in our experience. My grandma passed away almost 8 years ago, without anyone still believing us. I still try, and sometimes my mom seems to consider my version of events, but then quickly shuts it down and the conversation is over. I fear that I'm never going to be believed either. I may have been young, but I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I remember my grandma's reaction being filled with fear. I looked at her for comfort after witnessing the crash, but when I saw the fear in her face, I couldn't help but be even more terrified, and I remember that I cried harder. I have no explanation as to where the car could have gone. There was no cave, no water below for it to just float away. Just more mountain, rocks, and trees. But the police all claimed that there were no signs of a car. The guardrail has since been repaired, and there's no sign that anything actually ever happened. Sometimes I want to find a way to explore the place on my own, and figure out how to climb down the mountain myself, but I also have a slight fear of heights, and I really don't think I could do it alone. I want answers, though. And I think overall, for my grandma's sake and reputation, I will explore more options. If I do, I'll definitely update you as well. Until then, I hope that you enjoyed my bizarre and truly unexplained story. Hopefully, someone out there believes us. 2 years ago, on a night in February in Larimer County, Colorado, I was driving to a nightclub and I was going to meet up with some of my guy friends to party, because Saturday nights are always for the boys. We would do this about every Saturday unless one of us was busy that night. I had fun every time I went, but to be honest, I would sometimes feel pressured to go. And that Saturday, I stayed most of the daytime at my grandparents' house, which was not too far from where I lived. After I finished staying there, I went home, and when I got home, I showered and got dressed in nicer clothes. After I did that, I put on socks and fancy shoes, grabbed my phone and wallet and car keys, walked out the front door, got in my car, and then drove away. What I didn't know is that it would be my last time ever driving a car. The nearest highway from my house is only 5 minutes away. About 15 to 20 minutes on the highway while I was driving in the 70-mile-per-hour section, I saw a police car facing the opposite way on the left lane from where I was driving. My initial thought was that he was looking to give people some tickets if they were going way above the speed limit, and I wish that was my thought, but it wasn't. I didn't see what was on the ground since I was driving in an SUV. I kept driving, and then all of a sudden, I felt the car hit something really heavy. I then realized that I ran over a person. The car then started to slow down, and I started to put it in park. I moved to the side and put on my hazards. When I got to the side, I completely stopped the car, and right there, I started to have a mental breakdown. I started screaming and crying, knowing that I might have actually killed someone, but not on purpose. I actually wanted to get out of my car or even drive back to see if this person was all right. But that would be impossible to do because, 1, I'd be driving the wrong way, and 2, cars would be driving at nearly 80 miles per hour, and I didn't want to end up like that person. So, my next option was to call the police and report to the station. I then called 911 and connected to an operator and said what had just happened. The operator said they already knew because an officer was radioing in what had happened. I then asked if I could meet them at the police station, and the operator told me, sure. I got to the station like 10 minutes later, and I was panicking the whole way there. I went inside and I had to fill out a form describing the incident. After that, I handed the form over to the woman at the front desk, and after I did that, she said to me that the department would be in touch over the next week, starting tomorrow. I told them okay, and I left the station. I took out my phone to see a bit of unread messages and some missed phone calls from some of my friends. They were probably waiting for me at the club. I called one of my friends, whose name is Bob, and I told Bob that I wasn't coming, and I told him the reason why. He sounded shocked on the phone and asked if I was all right. I told him that I wasn't in my right mind, and that I needed to stay home for a few days. He sounded disappointed, but he understood well enough that I needed time for myself. I got home, and I immediately crashed out on my bed. Over that entire week, I learned that the victim's name was Brent Thompson, and that he was 28 years old. He got pulled over because an officer ran his tags, and he realized that his registrations were expired. When the officer interrogated him, Brent gave a fake name, and when the officer found out that he was lying, he turned to confront Brett, and that's when he made a big mistake that he forever came to regret. He fled, and then jumped onto the interstate where I was driving. And that's when the officer tased him, and Brent fell to the ground. Seconds later, I hit Brent. I didn't see him on the ground, nor did I see the officer on the side lane, as it was pretty dark outside, and I was going fairly fast in my car. Sadly, Brent did not survive being hit, and his family filed a lawsuit against the officer and the department, who was actually a deputy. His name was Lorenzo Lujan. The district attorney determined that his actions were lawful, and he was not charged for what he did. I wasn't charged or fined either. I've never driven a car again due to the traumatic experience on that fateful night, and now I just book an Uber or I have my friends drive me. This happened to me when I was 21 years old. I'm 24 now, so it's still pretty fresh in my mind. I went to a friend's bachelorette party and had been there late. By the time I left, it was probably close to 1 or 2 in the morning. I drove myself there alone, and the drive home was about 40 minutes from my friend's place, so I knew better than to drink. I had 1 beer early into the party and had water and Coke the rest of the night, on top of a ton of chips. So, I know, still not really okay, but I wasn't impaired by a long shot. I left the party, getting onto the highway ready for a nice drive, so I had the windows down to enjoy the moment. It was early June in Nebraska, so it was still relatively cooler in the evenings, which was perfect. I was on the highway with only about half the drive left when I saw headlights in my rearview mirror approaching my car. They were higher up. I had a small 2-door car, and this was clearly some kind of SUV. If you drive a smaller car, you'll probably relate to this because when an SUV comes up behind me, they easily blind me, and I have to adjust my mirror. No big deal though, I'm used to it, so I just flipped my mirror a bit and kept going. But I noticed this SUV got pretty close to my car and then would back up. And that is when I got a little annoyed. I was in the right lane, so if I wasn't going fast enough, they easily could have passed me. But instead, they were doing whatever it was they were doing. That wasn't until they finally got over to my left. But instead of speeding up to get past me, they met with my speed. I looked over whenever I heard someone shout. The man in the truck was now trying to get my attention for some reason. I couldn't quite make out what he was saying with the wind and the music, but I heard the words "wrong" and "pull over" as he pointed to the back of my car. The man looked genuinely concerned, and not angry or aggressive, so something made me think that maybe there was something wrong with my car. I slowed down and stopped on the grassy shoulder. I watched the SUV pull off behind me as I put my car in park and was just about to turn my car off when something suddenly screamed at me to not get out of the car. Something made me stop and think, what the hell are you doing? I've watched too many true crime shows and knew that I was probably overreacting. Those shows probably have me a little more paranoid than I need to be, but I kept the car running and my window rolled up 3/4 of the way. I watched the man get out of the driver's seat and jog over to my window. He looked like he was in his 40s, wearing jeans and a red t-shirt with the logo on the pocket. Maybe a work shirt, but I couldn't make out the name of the company. He went to my window and stopped with his hands on his knees as he looked into my car. He greeted me and then pointed to the back of my car, saying that my bumper was hanging off on one side. It's bouncing around pretty bad. It might be hitting your tire. You'll damage your rim if you keep driving with it like that. I twisted around in my seat to look out the back window. I don't know why I did this, because of course I couldn't see it from where I was. I was confused. I hadn't hit anything. I certainly didn't remember backing into something. No one said they had hit my car at the party, and I knew everyone there, so I couldn't believe that no one would have told me. I also didn't have anyone hit me while I was driving. So when could that have happened? While this was circling in my head, the guy said that he could at least tie it up real quick for me, so that it wasn't dragging until I could get it in somewhere to actually reattach it. He asked if I could hold it in place for him while he did so. I was confused, but I unbuckled my seatbelt and was just about to get out when, once again, my gut told me to think this through. That's when it finally dawned on me. If it was dragging, and even hitting my tire like he claimed, wouldn't I be able to see it sparking or hear it grinding or thumping when it hit something? I did have my window down after all. So, I told him this. I said that I hadn't heard the grinding at all. He gave me a friendly smile and said, well, not always, claiming that it would depend on how it was hanging. I may not even notice it. The gut feeling was at full force at this point. I was not feeling good about this situation, and I really wasn't comfortable with getting out of my car. I wasn't far from home, and I still lived with my parents, while my dad helped me with everything related to my vehicle. I stayed calm, and I thanked the guy for pointing it out, but said that I would wait until I got home to have my dad help me with it. I watched his expression change, like he was offended by my comment. He pushed that it wouldn't take long and that he just needed some help holding it up since it was dark out. I was firm and again said that I understood, but that I needed to get home. That's when he put his hands on top of my partially open window, gripping the top of the glass. It once again could have just been innocent, but getting that much closer to me made me even more uncomfortable. Clearly annoyed, he said, "I'm trying to be a good Samaritan here and help you out. And you're just gonna blow me off?" Why would someone take this situation so seriously? You offered to help and the person declined. You still tried to help, but why get so upset about it? Being the people pleaser that I am, I apologized and made some excuse about how my parents helped me purchase the car, so I have to go through them for any types of repairs. And again, thanked him for letting me know. That's when he started in on the insults, if you can call them that. This is exactly what's wrong with your generation. Someone tries to help you and you act all stuck up and ungrateful? What do you think, I'm some kind of creep or something? Because I'm not. And he even threw some kind of comment in about how he had a lot of female friends. I didn't know how to respond to this. I was already nervous and confused, and his anger out of nowhere froze me in place even more. I thought I would just slowly put my car in drive and leave. He was still at my side, so it's not like I would have hit him or anything. But he must have also realized what I was doing because he pulled on my window, breaking it instantly. I gunned it out of there as he tried to reach into my car, but I was able to drive away before he could do anything. I watched as he ran back to his car, and I could hear him burning out too. I was terrified that he was going to follow me home. I wasn't thinking straight. I know it because my first thought was to call my dad. He would be at home waiting for me, so that's what I did. I know he could tell that something was wrong the moment I asked if he was home. His voice got deeper with a serious undertone to it. I explained to him what was happening, and I heard him tell my mom to call the cops. He told me to keep him on the phone but to come home immediately and explain everything he did or tried to do. I was terrified, thinking this guy was going to ram the back of my car, but he never did. He caught up to me but kept a distance away. Now I was concerned about him following me home and knowing where we lived, putting not only me in danger but also my parents. I pulled into the driveway where my dad was standing right on the edge, watching and waiting. As soon as I put my car in park, my dad walked towards my car before running to the edge of the driveway. That guy had, in fact, followed me all the way home, and my dad was now yelling at the guy to stop. Thankfully, for everyone involved, he burned out and didn't stop. By my dad's voice, I have this feeling that he would have probably dragged him out of his vehicle if he had slowed down enough. However, because of what my mom had told the police, he was already waiting at the end of the block and flipped his lights on real quick, and had followed the SUV that had just burned out in a residential area. The neighborhood we lived in was very strict about that kind of stuff anyway. I got out of my car in tears at this point, and my dad hugged me to calm me down. I explained to him what exactly happened when another cop showed up, and I had to start over for him. Afterwards, we walked around my car, and I felt sick. There wasn't a damn thing wrong with my bumper. It was still attached, and not a single piece was dragging or dangling. That explained why I didn't see or hear anything. The guy lied about the whole thing, of course. And so, what were his intentions in getting me out of my car? They had me go inside with my mom to calm down while my dad finished up with the police. They had given no indication on whether or not they had caught up with the guy yet. My dad didn't say much afterwards until the next morning when we had all calmed our nerves. We scheduled an appointment to get the window fixed with the help of our insurance company. That's when my dad shared what he and the cop had been talking about. The cop told him that they had received very similar reports over the summer about a guy in an SUV stopping people to help fix something that was wrong with the back of their car. There had been 3 reports already. One woman got out, and he actually tried dragging her to his car, but she had managed to pepper spray him, and the other 2 wouldn't get out of their car. I was lucky to not get out of my own car. I was a smaller girl, and there was no way that I would have been able to fight him off. I didn't have anything to protect myself at the moment, and he broke my window by just pulling it out. My dad kept in contact with the cop, as in he would call in to see if they ever caught the guy because they didn't that night. So far, he's still out there somewhere, probably trying to do it again. I'm now paranoid when someone drives a little too close to my car, and I carry a couple of self-defense items with me, but thankfully, I haven't run into him again. Nor have I been stopped. I just sincerely hope that nobody else falls for his tricks. So that, my friends, was a collection of scary driving stories. I thankfully was able to do these after all the driving I had to do with moving and such. And now I never want to drive again. Now, hopefully you all enjoyed this collection of stories, and hopefully it keeps you off the road. I'm kidding. If you have to drive, drive, but also do it safely. I think that's an important thought, or important caveat to add to the whole thing. Driving safely is paramount to driving safely. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. You get what I mean. Drive safely. Be safe out there, guys. Don't be stupid. Don't be crazy. Drive the speed limit. Don't drive like you're insane. Just do what you do. Arrive alive, if you will. Yeah. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed the stories. If you did, please do hit that like button on the video. That'd be tremendous. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, please do consider subscribing. That's also quite helpful. And if you're feeling ever so bold, you can go down below the video and leave me a comment with your thoughts, how you're doing, how your day is going, so forth and so on. You can listen to the podcast on other platforms, such as Spotify and Audible. You can join Patreon or click the big join button down below, where you get early access to content like this and other special things, depending on how you sign up and what you sign up for. You can also be your amazing self and just keep being amazing. There was probably a third thing I needed to mention, but I forgot what it was, so yeah. Anyways, hope you're having a beautiful weekend so far. Hope your week goes swimmingly. Hope I see you again here very soon. But until then, remember that you are loved, you are valid, you are important to the best that you can be. Don't forget it. Until next time, my friends, much love and sleep well.